right, good.
You got actual mail? That from here or is that work? No, it's here.
Nice. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the December 6, 2017 meeting of the Public Works Committee of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners. And may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Hecker,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Myers,
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Thank you. Before we move to approval of the meeting minutes, I want to issue a special welcome tonight to Cub Pack 48 out of Glenside. They're here to observe this evening about local government at work, so welcome. Thank you for coming. There's a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2017 Public Works Committee meeting.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Public Works Committee has 2 items of business for consideration this evening. The first is PW1, and this is a motion to adopt resolution number 17- This is a motion to adopt resolution number 17-032, reapproving and reauthorizing the township manager to sign all documents pertaining to the Greenlight Go grant specific to the intersection of Fitzwatertown Road and North Hills Avenue, Woodland Road, and I so move.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from members of the committee? I'm going to wait until Nathan gets that addressed. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Commissioners? Comments from staff? Comments from the audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. Is that grant comes from PennDOT, does it?
Refer to the township manager.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we've had the discussion about the red light camera income that goes back to PennDOT, and then some of that comes to our township. So has there been a growth in the grants, in the figure of grants that we get from PennDOT over the years?
The amount of grants that Abington Township receives, especially Mr. Miklo and his team, is pretty astonishing. And this is a Greenlight Go grant that is just added to that list. And most of the work that is being done is being in kind, so a lot of our match is in kind because of the capabilities of our Public Works Department.
Okay, so I think the thing that many of us felt was misrepresented when the red light camera information was presented was that...
So is your comment or question specific about...
Yeah, it was about the grant and where the money comes from.
You're now talking about the red light cameras, not about this particular...
Well, I'm talking about the fact that the grant money, what I'm interested in knowing is, you know, if the grant money for these kind of projects has grown over the years. So is this the same size grant that we've gotten over the last 10 years?
So that's a question we can have the township manager follow up.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Just for everyone's information, this grant is not related in any way to red light cameras. We did receive a grant from that fund, that pool of funding, for another intersection in the township, half in the township, in Commissioner Kalinowski's ward. But this intersection rework, which we also share with Upper Dublin Township, has nothing to do with the grant money through red light cameras.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just as this I'm sorry.
That's right. Now, Commissioner Myers brought up the same thing I was going to bring up. This is not part of the Arley grant money.
Any other comments from members of the audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
PW2, and before I read it aloud, I just wanted to ask the manager and the solicitor, formality, do I need to read each individual line item here? Because we're
I don't think so.
You do not have to. It's your choice.
So PW2 is in accordance with section 1501 of the First Class Township Code. A motion to authorize the sale of township property as listed below in the motion has so.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from members of the committee? Commissioner Klein.
So, some of these trucks are not that old. So what makes, we recycle, we're bringing new trucks. Is there a certain lifespan that we look for in these trucks, and is this, or have we fallen in that?
Angelo, if you would, please. Yeah, it's typically engine time.
The trucks you're talking about are the trash trucks, which one of them is a 2003, a 2008, and 2010, and another 2008. It may not seem old, but with the amount of road trips and going out every day, it wears them out real quick, so that's why we get rid of them.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, the 2003 was clear, but I didn't know what, and then I saw 2010, so there's a big difference between those two. So I didn't know what the normal lifespan or what you're looking to get
That's
out.
about
now.
it
That's figured
there.
in
I
the site
mean,
in the schedule.
Yeah, with the new automated trucks, you know, the arms wear out, everything wears out quicker, and
Yeah.
it's just better to get recycle them, get them while we get decent money for them. All
Thank
right?
you.
Other comments or questions from members of the committee? Fellow commissioners? Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you. I do have one comment, and what I see there is, and it's a good idea because we won't be calling because our constituents say that the oil is on the street or something like that, so I think it's good to get rid of them before they start dripping that oil.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners? Staff? Members of the audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. I had cause to be in another township where they were talking about their good fortune having acquired some equipment from their rich uncle, Sugar Daddy, Abington Township. So I have a question in terms of how we procure the bids for the trucks so that if we are selling them, we get the highest price. And is there a sheet that the Public Works Department has presented that showed the cost of the maintenance? So normally when you're, getting rid of your car, which I just got rid of my old car, I compared the amount of money that it was costing me for maintenance versus the cost of a new one. And have you received a sheet like that on that?
Mr. Michelow, who is in here tonight to answer your question specifically, has a rotation plan with all of his vehicles, and as you know, we have a number of vehicles, and it is his plan to replace these vehicles. These vehicles will go to public auction, so we get the highest dollar back for them.
Okay. Okay, so there is not a sheet, or it's just a part of a plan that you generally?
No, they have
Place
very
them after.
a very detailed sheet on their hours, and I'm sure Angelo can talk to it more, but we don't make this decision just because it's a 2003 and it's gone. I mean,
Yeah, no, I know, I understand that.
it's very
But-
clear.
Yeah, well, you also understand that almost all the things that I've looked into have not been what they should be. And so we are definitely concerned that the processes get fixed and become what they should be. When documentation is missing or an analysis is not there, we want to change that. We want the public to be able to oversee what the processes are, okay? Thank you.
Any other comments from members of the audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
That concludes the formal agenda for the Public Works Committee. We'll now entertain comments on general matters of Public Works from the members of the audience. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Call to order the Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting for December 6, 2017, and may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Sanchez?
Here.
DePlacido?
Here.
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 First, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2017 Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. Item CE1 is an announcement. This is a notice. The applicant request for consideration of a text amendment by High Top Real Estate Group is tentatively scheduled as an agenda item for December 14th, 2017. Next, we have CE2. This is a reverse subdivision plan for Philadelphia Presbytery Homes Incorporated for the property known as the Rydell Water Site.
Excuse me, no, CE1 is an agenda item.
No, it's not, Ms. Lehman. There's not any action being taken, and you're out of order by approaching the podium without
Well,
being
there
called
is action
upon.
being taken.
No,
It's
there is
being
not.
placed on
It
the
is-
agenda.
No, it is not. It is simply being, there is a notice of it.
Okay, so,
Keep going.
Okay.
so the residents have still not been notified in the other properties that are related to
I don't know
this.
what you're talking about. Could you take your seat, please, and can we get on with our business for the agenda?
And you do know what I'm talking
CE2, the reverse subdivision plan for Philadelphia Presbytery Homes Incorporated for the property known as Rydell Water Site. This will be a motion to consider the reverse subdivision and land development plan submitted by Philadelphia Presbytery Homes for the Rydell Water Tract made up of Rydell Way, Noble Circle, and Harbison Way, zoned within the Senior Neighborhood Residential District of Ward Number 7. I believe we have the applicant here this evening.
Yes, good evening. William Kerr on behalf of Philadelphia Presbytery Homes. You'll recall that we were here last month and discussed another aspect of this project. This project really is just a sort of a reworking of a plan that was approved back in 2006 for a prior applicant. Last month we discussed a text amendment, proposed text amendment, which is proposed as part of this application. This month we're talking about an aspect. The prior plan was approved as 85 single-family lots. Part of what's happening now is we're eliminating we're basically doing a reverse subdivision to eliminate those lots and take it back to a single lot, all of which will be owned by Philadelphia Presbytery Homes as part of this project. So we have our engineer, Mr. Gary Tilford, who's going to just walk through a couple of, I guess, the key issues with regard to the reverse subdivision and land development plan. So I'll turn it over to him at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. I believe Commissioner Gillespie has a question at the outset.
I think it's Harbison, right? Is that the lane, Harbison Road,
That's correct.
Okay, well, it just says, it's different in here. It says Harbins, and I just thought we should correct that.
So noted.
Sorry.
I pronounced it properly.
You did.
Good evening. I'm Gary Tilford. I work with Charles Shoemaker Engineers, situated here in Abington. We've been engaged by Rydell Park and the Presbytery Homes, Philadelphia Presbytery Homes, to work on this project. As we picked it up, this project is as mentioned, was subdivided previously. Elliott Group was the developer for the properties, about 32 acres, situated between York Road, Susquehanna Road, and Rydell Park, which is situated on the fairway. A great number of improvements have been installed per the original plan. They include majority, or maybe 75% of the roadway, some of it being paved, some of it's not paved, curb is in. Some of the improvements at York Road, a traffic light went in, and that portion of the road is currently utilized by some of the residents on Huntington Road, and it's directly opposite the Abington Library and that traffic light there. Other improvements included sanitary sewer throughout, stormwater collection system throughout, a detention basin, and a water line that was installed to be dedicated to Aqua with the street, dedication of streets. What this application is before you is changing the type of use from a strictly single-family dwelling, and I believe they were planned to be two-story dwellings. This particular use for senior living is going to be on a one-story footprint, and I think some of those exhibits were presented before this board before. So we're still at previously 85 single-family homes. Now we have 85 units. The lots and the open space parcels that were part of the original subdivision are going to be by reverse subdivision, combined into one, have one owner, Philadelphia Presbytery Homes, that will own all the property, all the open space. So it's a fairly simple project in that we're working with the existing infrastructure. Now the changes to the plan are, one, a interconnection or a connection drive from the upper area that we call Rydell Waters to Rydell Park. That's one change. Another change is over time between 2006 and 2017, stormwater regulations in the township and the state, federally regulated through NPDES permitting, has changed. So the stormwater aspects of the property will be brought up to date. The addition of rain gardens, other water quality features that deal with infiltration, water quality, pollutants. The detention basin part will be reworked somewhat, still controlling the rate of outfall. So that's, in a nutshell, what this project is about. The roads will, because we're combining all the lots to one, we're also, the roads will remain private as well, so there'll be no dedication of the roads.
And this is basically just a configuration that's already been laid out there, correct?
The road configuration we're working with. The only difference, again, is the connection drive from Rydell Waters to Rydell Park.
Which is for Rydell Park's internal purposes, that the residents go and want to park within the property.
Absolutely, because they are not only owning, they're managing the properties.
And not a public road, in other words.
Correct.
Commissioner Gillespie.
You basically covered two of the things I was going to ask, because water is our big situation around here. And when I was looking, when I was reading this, it just said one...
Carol, put your mic down.
Oh, I'm sorry. It just says one storm inlet. It said number of inlets, just one? Or are you just depending on... I'm just reading what it says in here. Inlets. Maybe it's number one. Okay, that
It's
works.
number one.
That works, okay.
There-
And you did cover whether the streets were going to be dedicated.
There's
or
over
not.
100 inlets on the
Oh,
property.
good. That's really good, because I was like, wait a minute, they have to be really good detention basins. Okay, and you already covered that the streets are not going to be dedicated, so that's a good thing, too. And there is a gate, there will be a gatehouse or something at the York Road?
They're planning an
end?
entrance with some columns and a gatehouse, but I don't think the gatehouse is going to be manned.
Manned, okay.
And
All
it's
right.
going to be, from York Road, it's going to be positioned in a location beyond the Huntington Road interconnection. So they will still have access
Right.
out to the light. There'll be an easement provided for their access back and forth. Likewise, there's a business on York Road that utilizes that
Correct.
new road as well. And they have been, even though it's
Well, there's
in
homes,
a state of limbo since
there's a
2008
home
and
past
9.
one or two homes anyway, past Huntington Road.
The homes are frontage on Brook Road or Huntington Road. They don't front on the internal road.
Okay, great.
I believe, just for clarification, I believe we discussed a key fob type system for entry into the gated community portion, like a fob or ID system. Even though the gatehouse was not manned,
It's not manned, I don't
Mr.
know
Mast
if,
shaking his head.
I'm getting a nod,
Just
yes.
so there's not
Yeah,
error
we probably
track.
have a thing, yeah. I see four-way stop sign here. Not a dedicated street.
Is that all, Commissioner Gillespie?
Oh, yes.
Any commissioners on the committee? I did have one more question, Mr. Tilford, from me. There was a waiver requested for sidewalks on both sides of the streets. I believe that's because it's like a loop and you have sidewalks on the outside where the residents are located, the other side.
I'll clarify that point. Internally, there's sidewalks in front of all units on both sides. The entrance of the road from York Road into the site has sidewalks on just one side.
Which
So it's
side?
for that portion.
So in the
Which side, the north side or the south side of the access?
It'll be on the north side, sidewalks on.
So on the side of the office building? I mean,
Correct.
the low-story office building?
Yes.
And
This side is where the dentist is.
can I ask a couple more questions?
Yeah, but could you clarify which side?
The north side, which is where the dentist office is.
Yes.
Okay, right. Go ahead.
The County Planning Commission had mentioned about crosswalks, and I think that was in anticipation of some access point that would have to happen once you left the both-sided sidewalk to get to the one-sided. Is the applicant going to agree to be putting in crosswalks to make it safer to cross that road to get to the single-sided sidewalk?
Believe it or not, PennDOT jumped the gun on us and just upgraded the handicap ramps at
Yeah,
York
but that would have
Road.
been on New York Road. I'm talking about back near your...
Inside, we agreed to do the crosswalks that are recommended by the County Planning Commission.
You have agreed?
We have.
Okay.
Most of those were, curb cuts and pavement markings for the
Right.
crosswalks.
That question right out of my mouth, Commissioner Klein. Anything further?
Same brain.
Commissioners? All right. Thank you, Mr. Tilford. I would make a motion that we proceed with the reverse subdivision and land development plan submitted by Philadelphia Presbytery Homes for the Rydell Water Tract made up of Rydell Way, Noble Circle, and Harbison Way, zoned within the Senior Neighborhood Residential District of Ward 7. Nice and moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Ben, I did have one question, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Pennical, but the zoning, I know we still have to deal with the zoning amendment next. It's advertised for next week.
That's correct.
I can't remember, the reverse subdivision, that's already figured that the unit, we can have that amount of units in one lot based on the SNR district, is that correct? Because that was done a long time ago?
It would actually have to be reversed, the reverse subdivision would actually have to take place. Because the
Understand
minimum
that.
lot area in the SNR district for development's 5 acres. So
I'm
is
sorry,
it,
say that last part again?
I said the minimum lot area for development in the SNR district is 5 acres. So as to leave it as its current condition, which I believe is 88 parcels with
Right.
the open space and that, you wouldn't be able to develop under the SNR.
So the fact that this is going from 88 parcels to one parcel is not actually part of the amendment that we're going to consider next week. It's already something that's factored into the SNR district that we already have on the books.
Correct. The amendment is for 2 items, one
Gotcha.
riparian buffer related, one to the actual age of the residents.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you for clarifying that, gentlemen. Anything else from commissioners, members of the audience? Your name and address for the record, please. 3 minutes.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. This property has been drip by drip, piece by piece. If this whole thing had been presented back when it started, there would have been just absolute outrage. I mean, the fact that even after all of the gifts that they've had step by step, somebody else subdivided, somebody else subdivided the original thing off, somebody else clear cut it, somebody else began to pave it. and then we had little piece by little piece, and now they want to even undo, and there were meetings after meetings after meetings for these residents with their own property rights challenged constantly, and that affected the rest of us. And now, even with what they have, they want you to completely change ordinances that even affect other properties, or will affect other properties, and if they don't affect other properties, they're spot zoning. So the fact is, they're asking you again, the developer is coming in and asking you again to make special conditions for him. And one of the things that they're asking right here is they're asking you again to give them ownership and not to have individually owned homes. In Abington, more and more we are going to apartment buildings and things that are not home ownership. It is homeowners who are invested in their properties and in their communities. And tenants either, sometimes they're not given the say, they don't have the say, and sometimes they don't care because they're much more flexible and they're not invested in the property. That is a big deal, and was a big deal in the original talks that we had when this came. So here we are, drip by drip, piece by piece. And have all the residents been notified at every step on all of these? Okay, because I was told that on the other ones too, and that wasn't the case. So, you know, I had a call one day about 5 months ago, maybe, from the 3 people who were at Rydell Park, who were begging for me to help them because they were not getting what they needed there. The care and the services that are being given
I believe that's
are being
land development, so if you're straying, your time's almost
I'm
up.
not straying. Well, let me share with you where that fits in for you.
15 seconds.
You are giving all of these properties in the care of that same organization, so you should know how that organization operates.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Yes.
Commissioner, can I just correct the record on one item? I apologize to
Mr. Penical.
Just as the prior speaker alluded to the last land development plan, this board may not be aware, Commissioner Luker may be the only one left from the original land development plan for this, which was for 378 apartment units, which was approved for this site. So it was, from a staff standpoint, considered a positive step when it became 85 single-family dwellings. And you're all in possession of the staff review letter, and the manager can speak to you about that. But just for the record, the prior land development on this was for 5 apartment buildings, totaling 378 units. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Penical. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. And next, we have another announcement related to the same topic. This is CE3. This is a notice. The applicant requests for consideration of a zoning text amendment by the Philadelphia Presbytery Homes is tentatively scheduled as an agenda item for December 14, 2017. That's an announcement only. Next, we have CE4. Yes. This is to consider authorizing advertisement of an ordinance amending Chapter 162 zoning at Article 21 use regulations and the use matrix appendix, repealing and replacing Article 28 wireless communications and repealing ordinance number 1793 and number 1800. Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. This is, as you can see, an extensive ordinance. What it does is consolidate the existing provisions that were in place in the zoning code, as well as a couple of standalone ordinances, which were 1793 and 1800. It also updates the code to accommodate new technologies, in particular monopoles. Separates them out into 2 uses, those that are 10 feet in diameter or less, and those that are more than 10 feet in diameter. And distributed antenna systems, which are the small boxes that are placed on existing utility poles or new utility poles. separates out those uses between those that are going to go onto existing poles and those that are going to go onto new poles. And it sets forth a variety of regulations related to all new towers that would potentially be located within the township. It consolidates several different definition sections that were present in the code, updates a lot of that. And we did pull from several other ordinances that were adopted by surrounding municipalities. And this is a way of avoiding challenges to our ordinance for not accommodating these smaller types of cellular technology.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in plain English, this is really just keeping up with the times.
Correct.
Technology changes in this, and legal developments. And
Correct.
taking your best practices and creating something here that is more in tune with the world as it stands now.
Precisely, and the traditional cell towers that the board is, I'm sure, used to seeing are going to be much more limited than the distributed antenna systems, which are becoming more and more commonplace and are less intrusive and obstructive than the larger towers that are more traditionally thought of as cell towers.
Again, I do have questions again. I do notice that, they put these things, I think they're about, that thing on top of a pole is about 4 or 5 feet, and there's a thing stuck on the side of the pole because I walk every morning, and you can hear it. It's going, so we have no control over that, correct?
It's not that we don't have any control.
I saw it said so many feet between poles. I saw that.
Right, so if they're going to put up a new pole, it has to be at least 25 feet from all existing poles. We don't want 12 of these in a row. And they're going to be located in the right-of-way because they're going to be on utility poles. We also only allow them to go up to 45 feet for the pole itself and up to 50 feet total with the equipment. And any ground equipment is if it's possible, it goes up, and it obviously cannot obstruct pedestrian traffic or sightline traffic for vehicles. So we did put in regulations that will allow us to regulate it, but obviously a blanket prohibition is not something that we're permitted to
I don't know
do.
where these came from. I mean, because, how many years ago was it?
10.
About 10 years ago, when Mike
Yeah.
was still commissioner,
Yep.
they wanted to put a flagpole one in the woods, behind the VFW.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody fought it, and they didn't get that, but now guess what they have? And we don't know when they put these in there. You walk by and you go,
Right.
when did they put that up? So they just,
Right.
I
And
don't
one of the
even
other things
ask.
that we're requiring as part of this ordinance is that every time that there is an application for these facilities to come in, that they provide a coverage map in the township that shows us there is a gap in this area in data provision, and that's why we're putting these in here, and this is why we need this many units. So we are requiring them to back up their plans and go through the township processes in order to put these up.
they all want the phone, they want all of that, but
Right.
they don't want the inconvenience. Okay, thank you.
Questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Klein.
Is some of this being dictated by by FCC or state law, or are we anticipating that there is going to be changes in that are going to come down? Because I know that their regulations are always changing and usurp whatever zoning we might have on any of these things, with telecommunication bills.
It's a little bit of both. There has been a kind of a flux in state and federal law because a lot of municipal ordinances simply were crafted years ago and just don't accommodate the new technology. So it's a little bit responsive to that and a little bit anticipating what we anticipate seeing coming from the FCC in the future.
And am I correct in saying, they call them that, but data antenna systems are primarily not for for telephone usage, it's primarily for picking up data usage when you surf on or use an app on your phone.
Correct. That's my understanding. I certainly do not profess to be an expert.
We talked about this in the County Planning Commission, and that's the main reason why these are all starting to go up now is because there's gaps in the system with everybody using data as more so than they're actually using cell phones, using the actual phone portion of your cell phone.
That's my understanding as well, yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Just a quick comment, Commissioner Sanchez. With respect to Commissioner Gillespie's observations and with the understanding that there would be a reasonable space between such devices, truly anything that will improve the cell reception and the data reception in some of the parts of this township will be welcome because it definitely is an issue. Thank you.
Commissioner Kalinowski.
So, do we know how many of these are in Abington Township now?
There are some. There are not as many in Abington as there are in some of the surrounding municipalities. We have taken a more proactive approach and imposed our processes with some success. This is a matter of getting out in front of it so that we don't find ourselves in a pickle.
So by doing this, would it just be like, say they come in and they want to fill out an application to install one of these, would it have to come through code, or how does that come about?
So it depends on the type of facility. The traditional towers are still going to be permitted by conditional use approval, so it would come in front of the board, it would go to planning and all that. The monopoles, depending on where it's located and the size of it, would either require conditional use approval or be subject to permits. And the distributed antennas facilities would go through code and would just need permits, but they'd have to comply with the ordinance, so.
Okay. Would residents be notified through that, or just would?
For a conditional use, they would be notified,
Yeah.
under the township code, I believe, and Mark can correct me if I'm incorrect on that, but for just building permits, there would be no specific notification to residents.
Because the first time I saw one pop up, it was in Commissioner Gillespie's ward, and I don't think we had any knowledge of it being placed there. And so many of her residents were asking her, as well as me, where this had come from, because when the VFW put in a permit, and there was a lot of different things that went wrong with that decision 10 years ago, but this was like, it was just put there and no one was notified that it went there. So I guess this is a great thing to move forward with and set restrictions on this, so appreciate that.
Mr. Kalinowski, Mr. Pennical is going to take the mic for about 2 minutes to answer your specific question about where these are going. And as we were going through the writing of this ordinance, one of the things we requested was a coverage map for all services so that we could see if, in fact, this proliferation of where they want to put them, because there is one ward that I think I'd like Mr. Pennical to share with you. There's a number of these going into one section that's touching 3 wards. So just so you're aware of that. And without getting into great detail, this is going to be perhaps 10 to 100-fold of what you see in the very near future. This is a wave that's coming. In fact, they're talking about changing the regulations from FCC to FTC.
Okay.
But to your question, Mr. Pennical, if you would answer it more specifically.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, and I apologize, Commissioners. To answer your first question, the first 2 rounds of this equipment that went in, one was done by way of a lease agreement that the Board of Commissioners were involved in at the time. It went through Matt Lahaza, and it was specifically for 13 locations that were sprinkled within Ward 9, Ward 13, and Ward 12. After that, there were additional, the lease was expanded, and I believe 9 additional sites went in. Probably the most visible is the one that's on Mill Road, right at Washington Lane. We recently had a zoning hearing board application for 2 sites to be replaced. One in the 300 block of Church Road, the other in the 800 block of Jenkintown Road. The zoning hearing board did approve those. The permits have been received. We're waiting on contractor registration. The manager made reference to our solicitor had received packets through Crown Castle with 15 additional locations, all within 3 wards. It's within Ward 5, within Ward 14, and within Ward 8. The majority of the cluster is right around the Will Hill Elementary School area, and they stretch from the 1300 block of Arnold Avenue all the way out to the closest one being Mount Vernon Avenue, as far north as Mount Vernon. So it's a cluster. It just seemed rather unique that out of all these applications, if you take the township and break it up into grids, this accounted for basically less than 1/6 of the township to have all these locations. The manager alluded to, we believe that we'll see additional applications to install this technology throughout the balance of the township. Our feeling was to put an ordinance together, get out in front of this thing a little bit and create some criteria. Mainly due to the fact that it's our belief that sometime in the near future, either the FCC or the Pennsylvania Utilities Commission may take this off our platter, and we wanted to have something in place and legally binding when and if that happens. So Mr. Clark, Ms. Gallagher put something together. and that's what will be in front of you for consideration. In addition to that, next week, I'll make a color copy of the map. I plotted out the locations of the ones that they have applications, not applications, but they've submitted for the solicitor to review. And we'll get that in front of you so that you know exactly what we're talking about in Ward 5, 8, and 14.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that proactivity, Mr. Pennicuick, and the explanation. There's nothing further from commissioners. I would make a motion that we authorize advertisement of the ordinance as written on the agenda. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next, we will consider a motion to approve a First Amendment to a license agreement between Abington Township and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, successor by merger to AT&T Wireless PCS Philadelphia LLC, doing business as AT&T Wireless Services.
Me again. This relates to the property that's the transfer station. There's a smokestack there with a current existing cell tower on it. The current lease expires in September of 2019, so Verizon and AT&T have reached out to us to renegotiate this so that they can plan for the future, because if we weren't unable to reach an agreement, then they're going to have to relocate to another location. In the last calendar year, the township was paid $20,736 in rental fees for that location. The amended lease agreement will bring that number up to $28,000. It's for 5 years, so that $28,000 will be payable annually, and then there will be a 15% escalator if the party should choose to do a renewal for subsequent 5-year terms. This allows the township to control any co-locations that may go up, and other than that, it's pretty substantially similar to the current lease agreement that's in place. Unfortunately, it's still under review with Verizon's legal department, so I don't have the actual agreement for the board tonight, but it will be arriving prior to next week's meeting.
Pretty straightforward.
Thanks. So should we be voting on this without reading it? I mean, it's one thing to hear that it's substantially similar, but we don't have a chance to read it.
That's obviously a decision for the board as to whether or not they want to move forward. I think these agreements tend to be a lot of boilerplate. It is going to be substantially similar to what it was. I think we would be able to get it to you before next Thursday and pointing out any of the changes or additions, so I think you can move forward with it. So, but that's the committee's decision as to whether or not they want to move forward on it. And unfortunately, the holdup is not on our end. The holdup is just getting a final draft from Verizon.
Would there be anything precluding the committee from tabling this until next Thursday, and then we could vote as a full board, or do we need to have this subcommittee vote first?
Simply putting it on the agenda, I don't think, I think if you do want to consider it next week, it probably makes sense just to move it onto the agenda, take the official step of the committee voting for it, and then putting it on the agenda. And then if next week, we still don't have a copy, or there are too many unanswered questions, my advice would be then you table it at that point in time. But probably moving it forward to next Thursday is what makes the most sense at this time.
Okay, thanks.
The motion it simply says you're moving it for consideration the next week without taking any approval or recommendation to either approve or deny.
No, sure, but we're doing that without reading it.
Well, you're not taking any
Right.
action other than to
No,
move
but
it to
we're-
the full board.
I know.
Actually, the motion says motion to approve.
Because when this was written, we thought that we would have the agreement, but we did not.
I did hear from AT&T today, and it's just tied up in their legal department. He did say we would have it this week.
So do we need to amend the motion?
Again, that's why Mr. Farron, you specifically asked this, why do I say consider and not put the motion on there? Because you're just considering it. You may want to move it, you may not want to move it. The motion may not be what's written here. The fact of the matter is, in this particular case, we had hoped for, Ms. Gallagher had hoped for this final agreement, that you would have it Friday, Saturday, or certainly before today. We did not. So this is not the motion. The motion can be whatever you want it to be after your consideration. My suggestion would be that you consider moving the topic to the meeting next week, and if you don't have any satisfaction, then you table it.
I actually hadn't made the motion yet, so we can do it accordingly, just move it on the topic.
That's fine, just wanted to be clear.
So if there's no other comments, with that, I'll make a motion that we consider this at the regular board meeting.
No.
Second.
We were approving to put it on the agenda. That's all we're doing tonight.
Approving is an agenda item. Taking no action, an agenda item.
Commissioner Sanchez, just to clarify, the vote tonight is simply to make it an agenda item. The committee isn't approving it. You're just voting to make it an agenda item. So, yep.
Did you amend the motion to say that you were just making it an agenda item? Because it can be approved then without any committee approval, right? So if you didn't, and I would like to see you amend the agenda to say that if the commissioners and the public is all able to access it and be able to read it, thank you to Commissioner Farren for actually caring that he was reading what he was voting on, that if the public is not able to get it and the commissioners aren't able to get it in sufficient time before the meeting, that there will be no vote on the December 14th meeting either. That should be in a motion. Right now, you're moving just to put it on the agenda where there's no conditions, then it could be passed right away, whether or not we get it to read.
May I, Mr. Sanchez? Ms. Lehman, what was suggested was that they simply move the matter to the next meeting, and if it's not to their satisfaction, they could table it.
I've rarely seen anything not to their satisfaction, even if the public interest was not taken care of. That's my concern. My concern is the public interest would need to see that document as well, and it wasn't available for this meeting and may not be available in sufficient time to be read before the next meeting. And so I'm asking you to take the public interest as well as the interest of the commissioners, because even if you got it 5 minutes before the meeting, I know that all of you will easily say, yep, all in favor, aye. And that's not appropriate. That's
Ladies and gentlemen,
not a proper process.
We would operate that way. And
Yeah, if
you concluded your comments, I think we're ready to vote.
I wanted to take it back on that.
Okay, can you amend the vote? Would you be willing to amend the vote to just say that?
Just did it. You did. Were you paying attention? Did it.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Before you got up and spoke.
But did you say that if you said that it would go on to the meeting, and if you were happy with it, no matter whether the public had an opportunity to or not? I'm saying, can the motion say that the document must be had in advance? Was that in the motion? I didn't hear that.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
let me shortcut this for you. Very simply, because I'm going to say this because they have too much class to say it themselves. The Board of Commissioners just did what you're saying they don't.
I'm asking if they did.
They just did not have the information in front of them, and they did not take any action because they did not have the information in front of them. So their actions here this evening should be, if anything else, not to you, certainly to the public, an indication of how thoughtful they are in their deliberations before they vote things through.
Okay, and what I'm saying is, if the public does not have the documents in sufficient time, I would like the motion to say that. And if you're planning to do that, why wouldn't you want the motion to say that?
I'm not saying anything else.
Why wouldn't you want the motion to say that? Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that concludes the formal agenda for the Code Enforcement and Land Development Committee meeting this evening. We'll now take general comments.
Red line from the beginning, I distributed.
Your name and address for the record, 3 minutes.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So, 2 issues. The high top issue, still, again, that is tentatively on the agenda now. Okay, I'm not sure what tentatively means, but At this point, we are on the agenda or not with High Top on the 14th. Because the motion said tentatively, so we're not definitely on the agenda, right? Can you just answer the question, Commissioner Sanchez? This should be for understanding between us.
We can't produce.
Unbelievable.
You're unbelievable.
Well, I'm asking you a very simple question as to what you passed tonight.
We didn't pass anything, it was an announcement.
Okay.
The meeting doesn't occur for some reason. There's, the world ends.
Okay.
It's tentative, everything's tentative.
That's what Mr. Manfredi's calling class. I call that something different. I'm asking you to not put this on the agenda. I called people around the other 16 properties. They have absolutely no idea that this is happening. They had a right to come to the committee meetings. They had a right to come to the board meeting. They had a right to have you hear their input, and they have had no idea that this is even going on. I had one man who thought that he did get the notice. I asked him, please, could he find it and read it for me? He threw it out. Everybody else said they didn't get it. So, there's a problem with the process, number one. There's also a problem with the process. How did they go to the Planning Commission, to the manager, to the Montco, to everybody without having any approval? Can anybody who wants to do a project go before the Planning Committee and get their input to help write their ordinance? I'd like to know that, because to me that seems like an abuse of our resources, okay?
Petition government?
To petition government is one thing. To be allowed to bring your thing before the Code Enforcement Commission, the manager, the solicitor, etc. Well, petitioning the government and then getting approval, and then you have the right to go to those agencies. So I'm wondering if you would help me, Commissioner Sanchez, find if we have laws about that, because if we don't, that seems to be an abuse of our resources, and it needs your help to make a law if there's not one. Okay, so, and the other thing is the waiver policy for nonprofits. That also is an issue. I understand that it was somebody in the township who actually proposed that, not the school. The school said publicly that they did not ask for that. And the answer from Mr. Manfredi, I understood to be that somebody in the township had, a staff member had proposed that. And
Thank you for your comments.
and some nonprofits are so wealthy that wavering theirs in a general policy that waivers for all nonprofits would be another abuse of Abington taxpayer money.
Not necessarily to the comments, but just for anyone who may not understand. There has been discussion related to that property prior to the request for the text amendment. And there is a process that is established, no resources, just so the public who might be tuning in or reading the minutes understands, there has not been a waste of resources. In fact, the system that is in place, any professional fees that are involved when a property owner requests to, as you say, petition its government, pays those fees. So it's not the case.
Rezoning, they pay a $2,000 application fee, whether it's considered or not.
And it's a professional services agreement. So this idea that we are spending money to help someone draft an ordinance is just not correct. And yeah, and as far as the process is very clear. We've been very clear to say that you have not even granted a hearing for the ordinance to the text amendment. That is why it's tentative. Perhaps the applicant will withdraw it, perhaps they will change it, perhaps it'll get pushed off, I don't know. But only it says tentative just so everyone understands, because they were here once before, and we had said we would, if you were to give them the opportunity to present why they should request the text amendment, it would be that night. Just so everyone understands, the system and the process is doing what it's supposed to do.
Thank you for the clarification. We have a motion to adjourn?
I'm waiting for Aspen.
Sorry.
I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting of December 6, 2017, and can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Shriver? Here. DePlacido?
Here.
Bowman?
Here.
Spiegelman?
Here.
Kalinowski?
Here.
And I will now make a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2017 Public Safety Committee meeting, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
We've approved the minutes. And I believe, Living Good, you have a report this evening. Is that correct?
I do, Commissioners. Good evening, Commissioners. We previously reported to you that on November 10th, a 21-year-old male who resides in Philadelphia was arrested. This ended what we were calling the rash of late-night occupied house burglaries. You may recall that going back to around October 19th, October 24th, we had 3 of those, one of which was on Jericho Road. 2 more were up in the Willow Grove section, Lillian Avenue and Lukens Avenue. And there was many, many more throughout Cheltenham Township and Philadelphia. This arrest has effectively stopped those late-night burglaries, so that was a very important arrest. There's some other burglaries that have continued since that time, the ones that we're referring to as the early evening hour burglaries, and we're now able to kind of concentrate all of our resources on those. All this week, Lieutenant Steve Fink has been testifying in Montgomery County Court in a suppression hearing for 4 men who have been charged with what we termed the high-end burglaries. You may recall back around 2015, these were occurring all the way from Newcastle County, Delaware, into New Jersey, Radnor, Lower Merion, up here. Specifically, there was one on Jericho Road, happened at 1400 block. You may recall that one particularly. Those 4 men today, after putting us through 3 grueling days of suppression hearings, they've all agreed to plead guilty. They've all agreed to plead guilty to lengthy prison sentences, and I'm sure the district attorney will be reporting something about that in the very near future. So that's a real win to have those individuals plead guilty and not have to go through a several-week trial. As you know, Detective Rick Bigley is assigned to the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. This task force includes detectives from Montgomery County Detective Bureau, along with specially trained and sworn detectives from police departments in Montgomery County, throughout the county. ICAC task force members work to protect children from Internet predators by aggressively and proactively investigating Internet crimes that exploit children. You've seen the results of his work. And a number of press releases that the district attorney has put out. The most recent one was about a man in Glenside who had child images of children being sexually abused on his computers. Recently, Detective Bigley was afforded the opportunity to attend the National Center for Forensic Investigations, referred to as the NCFI, which is a federally funded training center in Alabama dedicated to instructing state and local officials in digital evidence and cybercrime investigations. The slots to attend that school are highly sought after and very difficult to get. We're very proud that Detective Bigley was one of the ones that was selected to attend that month-long training in Alabama. The course is run by the Secret Service. It is the premier training site for this type of training in the whole United States. There's only 24 law enforcement officers throughout the entire country that attended the course, and he was the only one from Pennsylvania. The best part about that training was that it was absolutely free except for his time. So his airfare, his lodging, his per diem, every single expense was paid for by the Secret Service. In addition to the training which he termed the best training he's ever received, and he is a really well-recognized expert already in this type of investigations, he came back with over $40,000 worth of high-tech equipment free of charge to Abington Township, which he'll be able to employ for these kind of investigations. So it was a real win for us to have him attend that training, and I think it will improve on his already excellent skills and make him even more effective in these types of investigations, which I think are critically important that we continue. And that's my report.
Couple quick comments. Chief Livingood, on behalf of certainly of all the people on Jericho Road, thank you for the outstanding work in solving both of those sets of burglaries years apart. Everyone in Highland Farms and everywhere else rests a lot easier knowing that you guys are always on the case. And I just got to say, I think almost everyone agrees that the exploitation of children is about the most vile crime there is. And seeing over the years all the work that Detective Bigley has done, he's like a hunter killer when it comes to people who try to exploit children over the internet. His work is amazing, and through all the press releases, so many people kind of follow his follow the incredible work that he does. And now to hear that he's upgraded his skill set is truly impressive. So kudos to him. I'm sure I know he maybe is sort of one of the more unsung heroes, but kudos to him for all the work he does.
Thank you.
Any comments from commissioners? Al, do you have a report this evening?
I have nothing to report, Commissioner.
And how about we have Rich Garrett? Any report from you? I know you turned it in. Thank you very much for that. And the second alarmers, Rich Garrett's here as well. Okay, moving on to the agenda. We have 5 agenda items, but some of them are for information only, so I will try to point those out, as is the first one, which is PS1. This is for information only. You may remember the promotion of Officer Joseph Bly to the rank of Sergeant occurred November 9th, 2017, and became effective November 13th, 2017. Is that my microphone?
Just take a soft tone.
It's scheduled for the actual agenda item, PS1, is unfinished business. Joseph Bly will be sworn into the rank of sergeant at the December 14th meeting. Moving on to PS2. We need some help here. Moving on to PS2. It's a motion to adopt ordinance number 2149, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic. Article 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 14, Stop Intersections. Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, Parking prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, parking prohibited except certain hours, no stopping or standing. Ordinance number 2149 will establish the following. Stop sign on Tally Ho Road South at Meadowbrook Road. No parking anytime on the south side of Maplewood Avenue from Davisville Road to Fairview Avenue. No parking here to corner on the south side of Maplewood Avenue, the intersection of Fairview Avenue extending 30 feet east. No parking Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on the south side of Maplewood Avenue, 30 feet east of the intersection 1800 block of Fairview Avenue to the driveway of 2232 Maplewood Avenue. Ordinance number 2149 will repeal the following. Prohibited parking on the north side of Maplewood Avenue from Fairview Avenue east to the dead end. Prohibited parking on the south side of Maplewood Avenue from Fairview Avenue to the railroad property, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions from commissioners?
Could you read that again?
I was just about to say.
Do I get a gold star for that one?
Was it Fairview Avenue?
It is Fairview Avenue and Maplewood Avenue that we are discussing.
I know where that is.
Commissioner Hecker, do you have any comments?
Nice job, Commissioner Schreiber.
Any comments from staff or audience?
Yes, Commissioner Schreiber. I'd just like to comment that this is the first time that we told you we were going to do the routine traffic things quarterly, and this is the quarter, and that's the reason there's so many of them that are here. We'll continue to take care of ones as needed that pose a threat to public safety, have to be done right away. The next time we'll do this will be March.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. My taking a breath in between sentences appreciates that too as well.
Any further comments? If none, we'll have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Jump out of here.
Okay, so PS3 is actually for information only as well, because there is a hearing on December 14th about PS3, and that is sort of combined with PS4. So the PS3 is will be a motion to adopt ordinance 2143, creating tax incentives for members of the Abington Township Fire Department and Montgomery County Second Alarmers EMS. I can just move into PS4. Okay. PS4 is actually the one we need that we can discuss, and this is to consider Resolution 17034, a resolution of Abington Township, County of Montgomery County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, establishing annual requirements for the certification of active volunteer service. And I believe we have, and I so move.
Second.
And I believe we have, are you both speaking? Dave?
Hi, Ken Commissioner.
Good evening. You're going to tell us about PS4.
Okay, Resolution 1734 was put together between staff. We held meetings with the fire chiefs, some commissioners, the manager, and solicitor's office, reviewing Pennsylvania law that authorizes this tax incentive for recruitment and retention basis. We had to establish some baseline criteria to start with. The nice thing about being a resolution is next year if we see we could up the numbers, we need to change the criteria, we can do that rather easily without going through a no ordinance process, okay? So the resolution itself established the fact that, number one, you would have to be a member of one of the 5 fire companies in Abington Township or an active member of the Second Alarmers Association, either as an emergency responder firefighter, ladies auxiliary, a business administrative member, okay, someone who is productively providing services to the township or to that fire company. We established a baseline at 25 hours. Naturally, most of us do about 100 times that in a year, but looking at our administrative, ladies auxiliaries, or support functions who allow us to get out on the street every day, we kept that number there. And the other part of that low number to begin with is to entice people to come in. They're not looking at 100 hours right off the bat. So we found it to be fair. We compared it with 7 other municipalities that have this same enactment. So
They also 25?
some are 25, some are 30. But it's in that ballpark, yes.
And all 5 companies are in agreement with this, is that correct?
Yes, all 5 of the fire companies are in agreement.
Yes.
The volunteers of the second.
We reviewed the program with the fire chiefs, and they have supported this program. It's another tool in the toolbox to sustain our all-volunteer fire department of some 220 active members. And the purpose is threefold: to attract new members, to sustain the members that we have, and to encourage our existing members maybe to get a little more involved in some of our activities. So it's just another way to help support the all-volunteer fire department.
So the resolution itself is those established requirements, and again, the hearing on the actual ordinance is next week on December 14th, but any comments from commissioners on the resolution?
That's everything I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so under the, I guess it's number 3 in the resolution where it says the members has accrued a minimum of 25 hours. How is that going to be verified? Who's going to sign off on that? I know we talked about that when we first considered in the advertisement phase of the tax credit ordinance, that there would be some kind of process by which the members of the volunteer fire companies would have to coordinate their accrual of time with the fire chiefs, and then that would be brought into the managers. And I didn't see that in here. I didn't know how that was.
That is all part of the written ordinance itself, that the fire chief, in the beginning of January, will have to sign a certification paper to the township with a list of all qualifying volunteers. Now, before the tax cycle, the volunteer who's applying for this, it's actually a reimbursement from their paid tax. They will file for reimbursement through Montgomery County or the Abington Township tax collector. Once they file, the tax collectors, they will look at that certification list and see that they're authorized, and then the reimbursement will be made.
And just to add to that, first of all, the 25 hours that exists in Ms. Gallagher and I and Fire Marshal Clark, who's not here but who participated in the meetings, went through great lengths to make the point that the fire departments have a very sophisticated system for every hour that's accounted for. So they already have all that data in their systems. So it's produced on a regular basis every time someone comes in. So it's already documented. I think that's kind of where you were going. At least I think you were. They have a system that records everything. And we discussed whether or not we should go points or hours, because Ms. Gallagher had a concern as to whether the state would approve this system. And I think there's enough of a conversion and there's enough history and documentation as to how Mr. Schramm handles this and how the fire departments handle this, that we have no concerns that this methodology and this resolution will work. One other quick note, you'll notice there's 2 resolutions in your packet. The reason there are 2 is because there was one first draft, and then there's the final draft, and we wanted you to be able to compare 2 so you could see what we started with and how it evolved and changed. Dave, is there anything you want to add about the methods that you use to accumulate the time?
Through our accreditation process, as the manager said, we have a very extensive records management system where we can document, verify, and validate our members' activity right down to the minute per member per activity. So we're in good shape when it comes to documenting the time. And
Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners?
Commissioner Myers, go first.
I think this was handled. I just want to be sure that this program will not affect the LoSAP program. The one has nothing to do with the other, correct?
This is actually something I had meant to ask when this was first proposed. I know you said you consulted other all volunteer departments to sort of analyze how they administered their programs. Are there any other volunteer departments sort of neighboring us that have a program like this, or are we the first?
Whipping.
Whipping, okay.
And at the last look in talking with some of the other fire marshals and administrators in the area, there's about 12 proposed ordinances for their municipalities. But currently, none surrounding us are active yet.
throughout the state, because of this new law, there's many fire departments that are thinking about this, talking about this, but like so many other things we do here in Abington, we're ahead of the game when it comes to that. There's no question about it. A lot of talk and not a lot of action.
Nice to be ahead of the curve. And thank you, Commissioner Schreiber, for first introducing this.
You're very welcome. Thanks for all the hard work on it. Any other comments from commissioners? Staff or audience?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. As many of you know, I've been asking, how would the public oversee this? My concern of having things like this, I'm certainly not opposed to the firefighters if they need to have an incentive, a monetary incentive, in order to have those firefighters. That is not my issue. My issue is how the incentives are given, and can there be oversight of them? So in what place would I find a list of the firefighters and what was paid to them? Anywhere? A document that I could requisition so I could see how this was administered? Yes, that's my question.
Do you have other questions?
Well, I do have other questions, and I would like to have my question answered so that my other questions can come off of what that answer is. What I further have to say depends on that answer, and I know you understand that. And the class act here that's missing is being obtuse and not helping residents understand things and get their government in a place that it works properly for them. So my question is, will there be a document that I can requisition?
I do not know the answer to that.
Is there somebody here who does? Perhaps Mr. Rohrer? Mr.
The
Schramm?
information will be attainable and available.
So there will be a document that I can requisition?
I don't understand it. I don't know that there is a document, but it will be available through the, if you sign the...
Okay, because that was my main concern with this, so that's why that's important to know. My main concern with this is I normally am not allowed to see what somebody deducts from their taxes. I don't know if this is going to be in the budget, that we have to budget for this. Do we know that we have to budget for this when we see what it is one year, that it's in the budget for the next year?
You understand that these are tax credits. Therefore,
Right.
it's not a revenue stream, it's a credit against what we take in.
Right, exactly. So in
So-
other
so
words,
you
if
just
you were
heard-
going to
you just
take in
heard-
2,000 and you have a $1,000 credit, you take in half of what you're going to take in, and so that should be known at budget time, and also the fire department's budget should reflect that. So that's what my concern is about doing it this way, rather than the legislators approaching the legislators on the next level and saying, we would like to have it done so that volunteers can have this minimum amount of, or this maximum amount of incentive money, because we need that in order to recruit. And then that would show up on the budget. That would be a simple matter. So that's my concern.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS5 is to consider approving a memorandum of understanding setting for the compensation of the Township of Abington crossing guards for the fiscal years 2018 and 2019, and authorizing the Township Manager to execute said memorandum of understanding. And we are making a motion to do that.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions from commissioners? Staff? Audience? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our agenda this evening. Are there any general comments about public safety this evening?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So one more question, will that information appear in the budget about the firefighters and the amount that they get? Will that appear in the budget? I think Mr. Manfredi could probably answer that, or the solicitor, or Mr. Schramm, or somebody. So could I get an
The
answer
simplest
to
way I can
that?
answer that question is, I just said, you understand that this is a tax credit against what we receive in earned income taxes. So you will not see a line item that says, this is how much this cost us in
Okay,
the budget.
so if it were anticipated to be, say, $50,000 or $100,000, that amount would not show up anywhere in the fire budget?
What I said to you is that the information will be attainable. What you heard the fire department personnel say is they have a very expansive, wasn't their word, that's my word, system for tracking every minute. Therefore, you will be able to see how much time, based on the criteria of this resolution, and extrapolate from that how much time they spent.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm also concerned that it shows up in the budget. As Mr. Manfredi mentioned at budget time, the only way to really track how things are being spent is when they're all put in the right place. And so that's an example of something that I would like to see in the fire budget. The other thing that I wanted to talk about also has to do with our funds and how they are either acquired or not acquired. We had the solicitors, and I've been working with Deputy Chief Warner on the fact that we are not asking solicitors who have already solicited to pay the fee. They have clearly solicited, and the answer that I got was, well, we don't know who it was who solicited. And what I answered back was that somebody didn't wake up in the morning and say, gee, I'm going to put out flyers for MCL today. Okay? MCL hired somebody. A letter should go out from Abington Township to say to them, who did you hire to put flyers out in Abington? And the answer from them, if they don't know, then ask them how many people were putting out flyers, and may you have the names of them, and then interview them and find out which ones were putting out flyers in Abington. If there were 5, then that would be $1,000 that was owed to Abington Township. And in the meantime, when that doesn't happen, then the taxpayers, the residents, are the ones who pay to have this work done when somebody is called or when the solicitors need to be monitored, let's say. And they do need to be monitored. Most of them are illegal. Okay, so I am concerned about our tax monies, and I would ask Madam Public Safety Chair for you to follow up on that, please. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? I actually have sort of an odd question. That has to do with stormwater management, so it shouldn't maybe come under public safety, but I'm going to ask. So, well, it kind of does. It kind of does. My prerogative here. So, I recently was talking to somebody who does social research and was saying that there is a project going on that has to do with finding the level of opioids in the wastewater. And I'm wondering if we have any information. Have you ever heard of anything? No, I haven't heard. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Apparently, the places where it's going up, you know, where in the wastewater, where they are testing for that, then the correlations being made, more opioids are being used in that area, consequently ending up in the wastewater. So I didn't know if that was something that was routinely being. Have you? I know you're not on the microphone right now, but I was hoping that you would. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but that was something new to me, so. Any other comments?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Just as a point of clarification, when you were talking about the information will be available, are we suggesting that we're going to release the names of our volunteer firefighters who receive, or just an aggregate sum?
When I said that it was in response to her, she was talking specifically about the hours that they worked, and they were talking about, they record all the time by the minute, so that information is available.
That the hours, not the names of the private citizens. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, then I will call for a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved. All right, it's my pleasure to call to order the December 6, 2017 Abington Township Public Affairs Committee meeting. And let us start with a roll call.
Commissioner Spiegelman.
Here.
Here.
Freiberg. Here. Crofton.
Here.
Kalinowski.
Here. We're all here. All right, let us start with approval of the minutes. This is a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2017 Public Affairs Committee meeting as corrected, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Manager Manfredi. Do I need to elaborate on the correction, or a very tiny?
No, I think if there is a minor correction, that will be reflected in the minutes before the full board on the 14th.
All right, then. All right, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. We have 2 items tonight on the public affairs agenda. The first one is PA1. We are going to, this is a motion to consider adoption of the Fair Housing Resolution number 17-033. The Township of Abington receives an annual allocation of Community Development Block Grant, which is CDBG, federal funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. As a grantee of these federal funds, CDBG and Home, it is required by HUD to annually adopt a Fair Housing Resolution, and I so move.
Second.
We've moved and seconded. Director Strother, any general comments? I know we did this in the past.
No comments, you covered it.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the committee, the board in general, the public? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
PA1 is approved. And second and final, PA2, resolution number 17-035. It's a motion to consider approving resolution number 17-035, closing out Community Conservation Partnership Grant Project, BRC TAG 2012, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any background?
I just think the project was such a success, perhaps Greta would want to talk about
We have a very special guest.
That's right.
Director of our wonderful Briarbush Nature Center.
How are you all?
Welcome.
Thank you. So this is really great because we are going to now, if you approve this, we're going to go for a bigger grant to implement. So we'll ask for your approval for that in about a year. So got a lot of great public input for this, and it's great, it's fantastic. I'm not sure, we're psyched.
So this is directly related to all the focus groups and
Yeah.
all the things that we participated in.
Yeah, and it's been a couple years, so some of you were involved. Lori was involved and on the committee, and
It's very interesting.
yeah, it's great. We got a lot of public comment, so the public was very supportive. 75 people showed up at one meeting early in the morning, which I was stunned.
Nothing short of astonishing.
Yeah, so yay, go Abington.
Many thanks.
Greta, were there any outcomes from that are noteworthy for the public to know as a result of all the 75 people coming out? It might be helpful.
I think, well, partly we've realized that a lot of people still don't know about Briarbush, and that we really need to reach out, and I just touch base with Van about that. We need to help people understand that they have this great treasure here in the township, and it's free. So we've got a wonderful property that some people are not using, and they really should, I think, to connect with nature. So, sorry, I'm excited.
I always put, pretty much every newsletter has a Briarbush item in it. You have so much going on. It really is an amazing array of programs.
Can I say one more thing? We also just got $121,000 from IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, to renovate the interior of the bird observatory. So we're working on that, and then hopefully we'll get another grant from DCNR and do the rest of the property. So
It's a rustic interior, but it can probably use a little.
it can. It's going to stay charming.
Good. It is very
Oh, thank you.
Any questions, comments from members of the committee or commissioners in general? Members of the audience?
Are you talking about this, or are you talking about
I'm talking about this, just this. All right. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank
PA2 is
you.
approved.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That concludes the formal agenda of public affairs. Now we will entertain any questions or comments pertaining to the general purview and auspices of the Public Affairs Committee. As always, name and address for the record, and kindly adhere to our 3 minutes.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So one of my concerns is you all just approved something that I don't know if you know the price tag of what you just approved, but I certainly didn't see any figures. So this is a concern to me as a resident if we have commissioners that are approving things that they don't even know the price tag on. So I don't think I certainly have not seen in any of the documents a figure of what the firefighters' deductions would run. The second thing is, and I do have, Commissioner Spiegelman, an apology letter prepared for you, but I won't discuss that tonight. I want you to read everything that I wrote about it first, but it had to do with your actions at the last meeting. I am still concerned about the actions of commissioners, of solicitor, of manager. Tonight, our manager said that you all had too much of a class act to say what he was going to say to me. This is not appropriate for staff, for commissioners to be bashing residents. When Mr. Mellon was here, instead of helping him and going back and forth over the OSHA issue, Mr. Clark actually tried to make him as small as possible. You don't know what you're talking about. And I've had that same comment a million times. That needs to change in this township. There needs to be an atmosphere of helping the residents into their government and seeing what you're doing. Some of the things that you're doing are really wrong, absolutely wrong, and all of you know it. And I would like all of you to begin to step up and become a class act, because what came from the manager tonight and what has come from the solicitor and what has come from many of you and all of you again and again is far from a class act, and this township needs to up its game, okay? The thing that they're doing in the mailboxes, that's a felony. It's horrendous that we can't get any positive action on that, okay? So there are a lot of other things. I'm going to send you that email first, and then we'll discuss them later. Thank you.
All right, well,
Motion to adjourn.
I think we'll go ahead and entertain the motion.
Yep. Yeah, let's.
All right, we're adjourned.